Rebecca had been staring at her phone for the past 10 minutes. The screen showed a simple message from her younger sister asking if she was on her way. She should have left 15 minutes ago, but her hands were frozen on the wheels of her chair. "This is stupid," she muttered to herself. "Why did I even agree to this?" 3 years. It had been 3 years since the accident that changed everything. 3 years since she went from running marathons to rolling everywhere. 3 years of building her company from the ground up, proving to everyone that she was still capable, still strong, still her. But dating? That was a different battlefield entirely. Her sister had been pestering her for months. "You can't hide forever," she'd say. "You're only 34. You deserve happiness." Rebecca would roll her eyes every time. She'd tried dating after the accident, twice. Both experiences were disasters she'd rather forget. The first guy spent the entire evening asking invasive questions about her medical condition. The second one treated her like a fragile piece of glass, speaking slowly and loudly as if the wheelchair had somehow affected her hearing or intelligence. After that, she decided to focus on work. At least her company didn't pity her. But her sister was relentless. She'd set up this blind date without asking, claiming it was with a really nice guy who was different. Rebecca had heard that before. Still, after weeks of nagging, she'd finally given in. One date, just one. Then her sister would leave her alone. She took a deep breath and texted back, "On my way." The cafe was one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls and overpriced coffee. Rebecca arrived early because she always did. Being in a wheelchair meant thinking ahead about everything. Where would she sit? Was there enough space to maneuver? Would people stare? She'd learned to scope out places before settling in. She chose a corner table near the window. Good lighting, easy exit route, and enough space that she wouldn't feel cramped. The barista smiled at her warmly, which was nice. At least some people had learned to act normal. As she waited, Rebecca watched couples come and go. A young pair laughing over shared pastries. An elderly couple reading newspapers in comfortable silence. Everyone looked so effortless, so uncomplicated. She wondered what her date would be like. Would he do the fake smile thing? The overly helpful thing? Or worse, would he just not show up at all? Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Hi, this is David, running about 5 minutes late. Traffic, see you soon." At least he was communicating. That was something. Rebecca adjusted her blazer and checked her reflection in the window. She looked professional, put together. CEO mode. It was armor she wore well. If this went south, she could always pivot the conversation to business and get through it. The door chimed. A man walked in looking around the cafe. He was tall, with kind eyes and slightly messy hair that suggested he'd been running his hands through it. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans. Nothing fancy, but clean and presentable. This was it. The moment she always dreaded. The moment when someone's face would change. When they'd spot the wheelchair and their expression would shift to surprise, then pity, then that awful forced cheerfulness that made her want to disappear. Rebecca straightened in her chair, preparing herself for the inevitable. The man's eyes scanned the room and landed on her. She waited for it. The pause. The double take. The hesitation, it didn't come. Instead, he smiled, a genuine warm smile, and walked straight toward her table. No hesitation. No weird pause. He moved like someone walking up to an old friend. "Rebecca?" he asked, extending his hand. "I'm David. Sorry about the traffic." "I hope you haven't been waiting too long." She shook his hand, slightly stunned. "No, I just got here a few minutes ago." "Great." He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, setting his phone face down on the table. "This place has amazing coffee, but I have to warn you, their pastries are dangerously good. I've been trying to cut back, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to fail today." Rebecca found herself smiling despite her nerves. "That bad, huh?" "Worse. Last time I came here, I told myself I'd just get coffee. I left with 3 croissants and a slice of cake." He shook his head in mock shame. Zero self-control. The conversation started flowing naturally. David was a teacher at an elementary school, 4th grade. He talked about his students with genuine affection, sharing funny stories about their antics and creative interpretations of history. "One of my kids told me last week that Abraham Lincoln invented the car," he said, laughing. When I corrected him, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Well, he should have." I couldn't even argue with that logic. Rebecca laughed, really laughed. It felt good. When was the last time she'd done that on a date? "What about you?" David asked. Your profile mentioned you run a tech company. What's that like? She tensed slightly. This was usually where things got weird. People either got intimidated or overly impressed in a condescending way. But David just looked genuinely curious. It's challenging, she said carefully. We develop accessibility software, tools that help people with disabilities navigate technology more easily. That's incredible, David said, leaning forward. What made you get into that field? Here it was. The moment she'd have to bring up the wheelchair. Personal experience, she said simply. I started the company after I realized how many barriers exist in everyday technology. David nodded thoughtfully. I bet there are a lot. I've seen some of my students struggle with standard interfaces. We have a couple of kids with different needs in our class, and the tech options are either super expensive or not great. He didn't ask about her disability, didn't push for details, just acknowledged what she'd said and moved on. Rebecca felt something relax in her chest. They talked about books next. Both loved mystery novels. David confessed he always tried to guess the ending and was wrong 90% of the time. Rebecca admitted she sometimes skipped to the last page if the suspense got too intense. That's cheating, David said in mock horror. It's survival, Rebecca countered. Some of us can't handle the stress. Fair enough. I can respect that. When the waiter came by, David ordered a cappuccino and, true to his word, a chocolate croissant. Rebecca got a latte and found herself ordering a blueberry muffin, even though she'd told herself she'd just get coffee. See, David said. I told you. This place is dangerous. An hour passed without Rebecca noticing. Then another. She'd completely forgotten to monitor the time, forgotten to maintain her guard. David was easy to talk to. He listened when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and shared his own stories without dominating the conversation. At one point, she reached for her coffee cup, but it had been pushed slightly too far across the table. Before she could adjust her position, David slid it closer to her. It was such a small gesture, so natural and unforced that it took her a moment to process it. He didn't make a big deal of it, didn't wait for thanks. He just did it and continued talking about the terrible movie he'd watched last weekend. Rebecca realized something startling. For the first time since her accident, she was on a date where her wheelchair wasn't the invisible third person at the table. David hadn't mentioned it, hadn't asked about it, hadn't treated her any differently because of it. He was just talking to her, person to person. It was the most normal she'd felt in 3 years. So, David said, finishing his coffee, I have to admit something. Your sister might have told me you were hesitant about this whole blind date thing. Rebecca groaned. Of course she did. What else did she say? That you're stubborn, brilliant, and haven't let yourself have fun in way too long. He smiled. She also said you'd probably try to leave after exactly 1 hour, so I should make sure to be interesting enough to make you stay. Is that why you've been telling all these stories? Maybe, his eyes twinkled. Is it working? Rebecca checked her phone and was shocked to see that 2.5 hours had passed. Apparently so. The cafe was starting to empty out. The barista was wiping down tables, giving them gentle looks that suggested closing time was approaching. David noticed too. I guess we should probably go, he said, sounding genuinely reluctant. But I've really enjoyed this. A lot more than I expected to, actually. Me too, Rebecca admitted, and she meant it. As they gathered their things, Rebecca felt a flutter of nervousness. This was usually where things got awkward. Would he offer to help her in a way that felt patronizing? Would he suddenly remember the wheelchair and act differently? But David just stood up, waited for her to be ready, and walked beside her toward the door. He held it open, but in the way anyone would for another person, not with that exaggerated helpfulness that made her feel like a charity case. Outside, the evening air was cool and pleasant. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. This was really nice, David said. I'd like to see you again. If you're interested, Rebecca surprised herself by answering immediately. I'd like that too. David pulled out his phone, but instead of just exchanging numbers like Rebecca expected, he said something that caught her off guard. There's actually this path by the river, about 2 blocks from here. It's really beautiful at sunset. And there are these benches where you can see the whole skyline. Would you want to walk over there? I mean, if you're not tired or have other plans, walk. There it was. Rebecca felt her defenses start to rise. Here comes the part where he realizes what he's dealing with, she thought. Where the reality of the wheelchair hits him and everything changes. I appreciate the offer, she said, keeping her voice neutral. But you don't have to feel obligated to push me around. I know it's not what you signed up for. David looked genuinely confused for a moment, then understanding crossed his face. Oh, I wasn't offering to push you. I figured we'd both just move however we move. The path is completely flat and paved. It's actually really accessible because they renovated it last year. The city did a whole thing about it. He paused. But if you'd rather call it a night, that's totally fine too. No pressure either way. Rebecca studied his face, looking for any hint of fake politeness or hidden discomfort. She found neither. He just looked hopeful, like someone who genuinely wanted to extend a good evening. You know what? She said slowly. That actually sounds nice. Yeah? David's face lit up. Great. Fair warning though, I tend to point out constellations when it gets dark and I'm terrible at identifying them. I just make stuff up half the time. They made their way down the sidewalk together. True to his word, David didn't position himself behind her or hover. He just walked beside her at a comfortable pace, not too fast, not awkwardly slow. It felt natural, like they'd done this 100 times before. So, 4th grade, Rebecca said as they moved along. That has to be a challenging age. It's the best age, David said enthusiastically. They're old enough to have real conversations, but young enough to still get excited about everything. Last week we did a lesson on the solar system, and this one kid asked if we could write a letter to aliens. So we did. The whole class wrote letters to hypothetical aliens explaining Earth. That's actually adorable. What did they say? Mostly stuff about pizza and dogs. One girl wrote an entire paragraph about how we have something called YouTube and warned the aliens not to spend too much time on it. He laughed. Pretty solid advice, honestly. They turned a corner and the path came into view. David hadn't exaggerated. It was beautiful. Smooth pavement stretched along the river, with regularly spaced benches and soft lighting that was just bright enough without being harsh. Trees lined one side, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. See? David said. They did a good job with the renovation. My brother appreciated it a lot. Your brother comes here too? Yeah, he has cerebral palsy. We used to avoid this area because the old path was a mess, lots of cracks and uneven spots. But now it's one of his favorite places. He says it's the first place in the city where he feels like they actually thought about people like him when designing it. Rebecca felt something shift in her chest. David wasn't just being nice. He actually understood. Not in a theoretical way, but in a lived, real way. That must have meant a lot to him, she said quietly. It did. It made me realize how much we take for granted, you know? I never thought twice about curbs or stairs or bumpy sidewalks until I started paying attention. Now I notice all of it. They continued down the path and Rebecca found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. David pointed out a heron standing in the shallow water, perfectly still, hunting for fish. They watched it together for a moment in comfortable silence. Can I ask you something? David said. And please tell me if I'm overstepping. Here it comes, Rebecca thought. The personal questions. The invasive curiosity dressed up as concern. Your company, the accessibility software. What made you start it specifically? Was it just seeing a market need or was there more to it? It was a business question, not a personal one. Rebecca felt herself relax again. Both, honestly. After my accident 3 years ago, I was shocked by how many everyday things suddenly became complicated. Simple stuff like ordering food online or using social media apps. The interfaces weren't designed with people like me in mind. She waited for him to press for details about the accident, about her injury, about her medical situation. Most people did. Instead, David nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. And turning frustration into a business opportunity is smart. How big is your team now? They talked about her company for a while. David asked intelligent questions about the technology, the challenges of competing with bigger corporations, and her vision for expansion. He seemed genuinely interested, not just politely listening. We're actually developing this new software that uses AI to predict what accessibility features someone might need based on their behavior patterns, Rebecca explained, getting animated as she spoke. It's still in beta, but the early results are promising. That's incredible. So it's like the technology learns and adapts to the individual person. Exactly. Instead of having to manually adjust every setting, the software figures out what works best for you. Your investors must love that, Rebecca laughed. Some of them do. Others think it's too ambitious. I had one guy tell me I should focus on simpler solutions for what he called a niche market. Let me guess, you ignored him? Completely. Turned out to be the right call. That feature is now our biggest selling point. David grinned. I bet that felt good. It really did. They found a bench overlooking the water and sat down. Well, David sat, and Rebecca positioned herself beside him. The sun had fully set now, and the sky was a deep purple with stars just beginning to appear. Okay, David said, looking up. So that bright one there? That's definitely Mars, or Jupiter. One of the planets for sure. Rebecca laughed. You really weren't kidding about being bad at this. I warned you. My brother is the astronomy expert. I just nod and pretend to understand. How old is your brother? 28. He's a graphic designer. Works from home mostly. Incredibly talented. He designed the logo for a major streaming service, but he can't tell anyone because of the NDA he signed. It kills him. That must be frustrating, right? He did this amazing work, and he can't even put it in his portfolio properly. But he's philosophical about it. Says the work matters more than the credit. Rebecca found herself studying David's profile as he talked. There was something gentle about him, but not soft. He had an ease about him that came from real confidence, not bravado. He didn't seem to be trying to impress her or prove anything. He was just being himself. Can I ask you something now? Rebecca said. Fair is fair. Why are you single? I mean, that's probably too direct, but I'm curious. You're a teacher. You're clearly close with your family. You can hold a conversation. What's the story? David smiled ruefully. Divorced, actually. 3 years ago. We married young, grew apart. She wanted to move to California for her career. I couldn't leave because of my daughter. You have a daughter? Yeah, Lily, she's 8. Best kid in the world, though I might be biased. He pulled out his phone and showed Rebecca a photo. A little girl with missing front teeth grinned at the camera, holding up a drawing. That's her. She's obsessed with art right now. Everything is either painting or drawing or sculpting with clay. She's adorable. She really is. Her mom sees her during summers and holidays. It's not ideal, but we make it work. He put his phone away. It's actually why I was hesitant about dating for a while. A lot of people hear single dad and run. They assume it's too complicated or too much baggage. Is that what happened with previous dates? Sometimes. One woman literally said she wasn't interested in playing stepmom. Which is fine, I guess. Better to know up front. But it made me pretty cautious about putting myself out there again. Rebecca understood that feeling all too well. Being cautious. Protecting yourself from disappointment. Your sister was persistent, David continued. She and my ex-wife used to work together. Small world. She kept saying she knew someone perfect for me. Someone who would get it. I thought she was just being optimistic, but... He looked at Rebecca. I'm glad I listened. Me too, Rebecca admitted. Though my sister is never going to let me forget she was right. They talked about family then. Rebecca's parents, who lived upstate and called every Sunday. David's mom, who babysat Lily whenever he needed help. The complications and comforts of family relationships. A jogger passed by, giving them a friendly nod. A couple walked their dog along the path. Life continued around them in its normal rhythm, and for once, Rebecca felt like she was part of that rhythm instead of watching from the sidelines. I have a confession, David said after a moment of comfortable silence. When your sister first told me about you, she mentioned the wheelchair. And I appreciated that she did, because I think she wanted to gauge my reaction. Rebecca tensed slightly. Here it was. The real conversation. But here's the thing, David continued. My reaction was basically, okay, and? Not because I was trying to be politically correct or whatever, but because my brother's taught me something important over the years. He used to get so frustrated when people would tree. As the evening grew darker, tiny lights along the path began to glow softly. Rebecca hadn't noticed them before, but now they created a warm, almost magical atmosphere. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this peaceful, this present in a moment. I should probably ask, David said, glancing at his phone to check the time. Do you have to get going? I don't want to keep you out too late if you have work tomorrow. Rebecca checked her own phone. It was almost 9. She did have an early meeting, but for the first time in months, work was the last thing on her mind. I should probably head out soon, she admitted reluctantly, but I'm not in a rush. Good, because there's something I want to show you if you're up for it. It's just a little further down the path. Sure, I'm curious now. They continued along the river, and Rebecca noticed David had been right about the path. It was impeccably maintained, smooth and wide, with plenty of space. Someone had actually thought about accessibility when designing it, and it showed. "So," David said as they moved, "I have to admit something else. I might have scouted this location before tonight." Rebecca looked at him with surprise. "You did?" "Yeah. After your sister told me about you, I wanted to make sure I suggested places that were actually accessible, not just places I assumed would be okay. I drove by here last week, walked the whole path, checked out the cafe. I even went inside to make sure there was enough space between tables." Rebecca felt her chest tighten with emotion. "You did all that before even meeting me?" David shrugged, looking a bit embarrassed. "I just wanted to make sure you'd be comfortable. Too many people say places are accessible when they're really not. Figured it was better to check myself than risk you showing up somewhere that turned out to be a nightmare." "That's really thoughtful. It's basic consideration, really, but you'd be surprised how many people don't think about it." They reached a small clearing where the path widened. There was a beautiful view of the city skyline reflected in the water, buildings lit up against the night sky. A wooden platform extended slightly over the river, creating a perfect viewing spot. "This is what I wanted to show you," David said. "It's even better at night." The platform was level with the path, no steps, no barriers. They moved onto it together, and Rebecca had to admit the view was stunning. The city looked different from here, less chaotic, more beautiful. "My brother and I come here sometimes," David said, "just to talk. There's something about this spot that makes conversations easier, you know." "I can see why." They stood there quietly for a moment, taking in the view. A cool breeze came off the water, and Rebecca pulled her jacket tighter. "Cold?" David asked. "A little. We can head back if you want." "Not yet. This is too nice," David smiled. "Yeah, it is." Rebecca found herself studying the skyline, picking out buildings she recognized. Her office was somewhere in that cluster of towers. From here it looked small, manageable, not the overwhelming mountain of responsibility it sometimes felt like. "Can I ask you something?" David said. "And please tell me if this is too personal." Rebecca braced herself. "Go ahead. Running a company at your age, that's impressive. But it must be exhausting too. Do you ever let yourself just stop and breathe?" It wasn't the question she expected. Not about the wheelchair, not about her limitations, just a genuine question about her as a person. "Honestly, no, not really. I feel like if I stop even for a moment, everything will fall apart." "Has it ever actually fallen apart when you took time off?" Rebecca thought about it. "No, but the fear's always there. I get that. After my divorce, I threw myself into teaching and taking care of Lily. Didn't date, didn't go out, didn't do anything that wasn't work or parenting. My mom finally sat me down and told me I was going to burn out. She said even superheroes need rest. Did you listen? Eventually. Started doing little things for myself. Reading before bed. Going to the gym on Saturday mornings while Lily was at art class. Nothing huge, but it helped. Made me realize I could be a good dad and a good teacher without sacrificing every single piece of myself." Rebecca nodded slowly. "That's something I'm still working on. The balance thing. It's hard, especially when you feel like you have something to prove." "Do I seem like I have something to prove?" David considered this carefully. "I think maybe you're proving things to yourself more than to anyone else. Which I understand. But from what I've seen tonight, you're already pretty remarkable. You don't need to prove anything to me." Something about the way he said it, simple and honest, made Rebecca's throat tighten. She wasn't used to this. To someone seeing her clearly without judgment or pity or excessive admiration, just seeing her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means more than you know." They stayed on the platform a while longer, talking about dreams and goals and the weird pressure of being in your 30s. David talked about wanting to write a children's book someday. Something about a kid who sees the world differently and realizes that's a superpower. Rebecca shared her secret desire to eventually start a nonprofit, offering free accessibility consultations to small businesses that couldn't afford expensive solutions. "You should do it," David said. "The nonprofit thing. Maybe someday. When the company is more stable. Or maybe sooner than that. Sometimes we use stability as an excuse to put off the things that actually matter to us." Rebecca looked at him. "That's very philosophical." "I have my moments," he grinned. Usually by accident. A notification buzzed on David's phone. He glanced at it and smiled. "Lily just sent me a picture of what she's calling her masterpiece. Want to see?" He showed Rebecca a photo of a painting that appeared to be a sunset. Or possibly a forest fire, it was hard to tell, but the enthusiasm was evident in every wild brushstroke. She's very expressive, Rebecca said diplomatically. David laughed. That's a nice way of saying it's complete chaos. But she loves it, and that's what matters. She wants to be an artist when she grows up. Last week she wanted to be a veterinarian. Next week it'll probably be something else entirely. She's lucky to have a dad who supports all of it. I just want her to know she can be anything, that nothing is impossible if she works hard and believes in herself. He paused. Though I draw the line at professional dragon trainer. I told her that's not a real job yet. Yet? I'm leaving room for technological advances. Rebecca laughed, a real genuine laugh that felt good. That's very forward-thinking of you. They started heading back along the path, neither of them in any real hurry. The night had gotten cooler, but Rebecca barely noticed. She was too caught up in the conversation and the ease of David's presence. So, David said as they walked, I know this is presumptuous, but I'd really like to see you again. If you're interested, I mean. I'm interested, Rebecca said before she could overthink it. Yeah? David's face lit up. That's great. Really great. What about next weekend? I could cook dinner at my place. I'm not a chef or anything, but I make a decent pasta. And Lily would love to meet you. She's been asking who I was meeting tonight, and I told her it was someone special. No pressure, though. If meeting her feels too soon, we could do something else. Meeting his daughter. That was a big step. Most people waited months before introducing their kids. But something about the way David said it, casual and hopeful rather than heavy and serious, made it feel less scary. I'd like to meet her, Rebecca heard herself say. Really? That's amazing. She's going to be so excited. Fair warning, she'll probably ask you a million questions, and she might want to show you every single piece of art she's ever made. It's a lot. I think I can handle it. I believe you can. David pulled out his phone. Let me give you my address. How's 7 next Saturday? That gives Lily time to eat dinner at a reasonable hour, and we can hang out after. They exchanged numbers and addresses. Rebecca found herself smiling as she saved his contact information. This was really happening. She was going on a second date, and it would involve meeting his daughter. The old Rebecca, the pre-accident Rebecca, would have run from this kind of commitment. But now she felt ready. They reached the parking area where Rebecca's van was parked. It was a modified vehicle, one of the few splurges she'd allowed herself. Independence on wheels, she called it. This is me, she said, gesturing to the van. Nice ride, David said appreciatively. My brother has a similar setup. He calls his the Freedom Machine. I like that. Might steal it. He'd be honored. They stood there for a moment, the goodbye hanging awkwardly between them. Rebecca wasn't sure what the protocol was here. Did they hug? Shake hands? Wave and drive off? The week between dates felt impossibly long. Rebecca found herself checking her phone more often than usual, smiling at David's random messages throughout the day. He'd send her pictures of funny things his students did, or memes about teaching that made her laugh during meetings. She'd respond with updates from her office, the chaos of product launches and investor calls. But underneath the lightness was a current of anxiety. Meeting his daughter was a big deal. What if the kid didn't like her? What if seeing her with Lily made David realize this was too complicated? Rebecca had learned that people could be accepting in theory but uncomfortable in practice. By Saturday morning, she'd changed her outfit 3 times. Too formal looked like she was trying too hard. Too casual looked like she didn't care. She finally settled on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater, something comfortable but put together. Her sister called as she was getting ready. You're nervous. How did you know? Because you always call me the night before something important, and you didn't, which means you're really nervous. Rebecca sighed. What if she doesn't like me? Kids are honest. They don't fake it. That's actually a good thing. You'll know where you stand, and besides, if David's introducing you to her, he's already thought this through. He wouldn't put her in an uncomfortable situation. You're right. I know you're right. Of course I'm right. Now go charm that little girl the way you charm investors. That's very different, is it though? Both require confidence and authenticity. You've got this. Rebecca arrived at David's house at exactly 7. It was a modest 2-story in a family-friendly neighborhood with a small garden in front and a basketball hoop in the driveway. Wind chimes hung on the porch, and children's drawings were visible through the front window. She took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The door flew open almost immediately, revealing a little girl with wild curly hair and paint-stained overalls. She stared at Rebecca with undisguised curiosity. "You're Rebecca? Dad said you were coming. That's a cool chair. Can I touch it? Dad says I have to ask before touching people's stuff. Do you want to see my art? I made like 100 pictures. This week." "Lily, breathe." David's voice came from behind her, amused and gentle. He appeared in the doorway wearing an apron that said "Dad Jokes Loading." "Let her at least get inside first." "Sorry," Lily said, not looking sorry at all. "I'm just excited. We never have company." "That's not true. Grandma comes over all the time." "Grandma doesn't count, she's family." Rebecca found herself smiling. The girl's enthusiasm was infectious. "Hi, Lily. It's really nice to meet you. And yes, I'd love to see your art." Lily's face lit up. "Really? Most adults just say that to be nice, but they don't actually want to see it." "Well, your dad told me you're an artist, and I like art, so I really do want to see it." "Okay, but you have to be honest. Dad always says everything is great, but he's my dad, so he has to say that." David laughed, shaking his head. "Come on in, Rebecca. Welcome to the chaos." The inside of the house was exactly what Rebecca expected. Lived in and comfortable, with toys tucked into baskets, books stacked on shelves, and photos covering almost every wall. It smelled like tomato sauce and garlic bread. Homey. "I made pasta," David said, leading her to the kitchen. "Nothing fancy, just spaghetti with homemade sauce. Lily helped with the garlic bread, which means it's probably 90% butter." "It's good butter, though," Lily called from the living room, where she was already pulling out a massive portfolio of artwork. Rebecca noticed David had set the table with care. Placemats, cloth napkins, even a small vase with fresh flowers. It wasn't fancy, but it was thoughtful. "This is really nice," she said. "I wanted to make a good impression," David admitted. "Though, Lily has already told all our neighbors that her dad has a girlfriend now, so the pressure's on." "I didn't know I'd been promoted to girlfriend status," Rebecca teased. "Lily doesn't believe in taking things slow. In her mind, if I like someone enough to invite them over, they're basically already married." "Married is next year," Lily shouted from the other room, clearly eavesdropping. "I told Jenny at school we're doing this in steps." David looked mortified. "I'm so sorry." But Rebecca was laughing. "It's fine. It's actually kind of refreshing. No games, no pretending." They ate dinner at the kitchen table, with Lily dominating most of the conversation. She talked about school, her best friend Jenny, who was currently mad at her because of a playground dispute, and her art teacher who let them use real canvas like actual artists. And then Tommy said my painting looked like a blob, but Miss Anderson said all art is subjective, which means everyone sees things different, so Tommy was wrong, Lily explained, twirling spaghetti with enthusiasm. "Tommy sounds like he doesn't know much about art," Rebecca said. "That's what I said. But Dad said I should be nice because maybe Tommy was having a bad day." "Your dad's right," Rebecca agreed. "But also your painting probably wasn't a blob. It was a sunset over mountains. I used like 5 different colors. Then Tommy definitely needs glasses." Lily giggled, clearly delighted to have someone on her side. After dinner, Lily gave Rebecca a complete tour of her art collection. Paintings, drawings, clay sculptures that looked like they might collapse at any moment, and an entire series of portraits of their cat, Mr. Whiskers. "This one is Mr. Whiskers being dramatic," Lily explained, showing a painting of an orange cat with exaggerated features. "And this one is Mr. Whiskers judging me. And this one is Mr. Whiskers sleeping, which is what he does mostly." "They're all very expressive," Rebecca said honestly. "You can really see his personality." Lily beamed. "Dad says the same thing, but I wasn't sure if he meant it. Adults sometimes lie to be nice." "I'm not lying. I really like them. You have a good eye for detail." "What does that mean?" "It means you notice things that other people might miss, like how Mr. Whiskers' tail curls when he sleeps, or how his ears turn a little when he's judging you." Lily looked at her paintings with new appreciation. "I never thought about it that way, but you're right. I do notice that stuff." David watched this exchange from the doorway, something soft in his expression. When Lily ran off to get more artwork from her room, he stepped closer to Rebecca. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being genuine with her. A lot of people talk down to kids or patronize them. You're treating her like a real person. She is a real person. A pretty cool one, actually. I think she likes you more than she likes me right now." "I doubt that. You're the one with the dad jokes loading apron. That was a Father's Day gift. I'm contractually obligated to wear it." Lily returned with another stack of papers. "Okay, so these are my experimental phase. That's what I call it. I was trying different styles." For the next hour, Rebecca looked at artwork, offered genuine observations, and listened to Lily's explanations of her creative process. The kid was smart, articulate, and had that beautiful unself-conscious creativity that adults lose somewhere along the way. "Can I ask you a question?" Lily said suddenly, in the way kids do when they've been thinking about something. "Sure. Does your chair have a name?" Rebecca blinked. Of all the questions she'd expected, that wasn't one of them. "No, it doesn't." "Why not?" "Dad's car has a name. We call her Betsy because she's old and makes weird sounds." "That's true," David confirmed. "Betsy is very vocal about her feelings." "I never thought about naming it," Rebecca admitted. "You should. Everything important should have a name." Lily tilted her head, studying the wheelchair with an artist's eye. "I think it should be called Thunder." "Thunder?" "Yeah, because it's strong and powerful. Like thunder. And it's dark gray, which is like storm clouds. Thunder is a cool name." Rebecca felt her eyes prickle with unexpected emotion. This 8-year-old had just reframed her wheelchair in a way no adult ever had. Not as a medical device or a symbol of limitation, but as something powerful and worthy of a warrior's name. "Thunder," she repeated. "I really like that." "Can I draw it?" Lily asked. "I've never drawn a wheelchair before, and it has all these cool parts." "Sure, you can draw it." Lily immediately grabbed her sketchbook and started working, her tongue poking out in concentration. David caught Rebecca's eye and mouthed, "Sorry," but Rebecca shook her head. This was actually wonderful. As Lily drew, she kept up a running commentary. "The wheels are tricky because they have to be perfect circles, and circles are hard. But the handles are easy. And I'm going to add lightning bolts because thunder should have lightning." "Lightning bolts are a nice touch," Rebecca agreed. When Lily finished, she held up the drawing with pride. It wasn't technically perfect, but it captured something essential. The wheelchair looked strong and dynamic, decorated with lightning bolts and what appeared to be stars. "I added stars because stars are powerful too," Lily explained. "And because you look like someone who should have stars." Rebecca had to blink back tears. "Thank you, Lily. This is really special. You can keep it. I'll make Dad hang it on his wall so he remembers you're cool." "I don't need a reminder," David said, his voice warm. "But we'll definitely hang it up." Eventually, Lily's bedtime arrived. She tried to nag living room. The house felt quieter. 6 months passed like a beautiful blur. Rebecca couldn't quite believe how naturally David and Lily had woven themselves into her life. What started as nervous dates evolved into comfortable routines. Sunday breakfasts at David's house. Lily's art shows where Rebecca sat in the front row. Movie nights where they argued about which film to watch, with Lily somehow always winning. There were challenges, of course. Rebecca's work sometimes consumed her, and David struggled to balance teaching, parenting, and making time for their relationship. But they talked through it. Really talked with honesty that Rebecca hadn't experienced in previous relationships. One Saturday morning, Rebecca was working from David's kitchen table while he made pancakes, and Lily practiced violin in the living room. Or tried to practice. The sounds coming from the other room were somewhere between music and a cat in distress. "She's very dedicated," David said diplomatically, wincing at a particularly off-key note. "She's very loud," Rebecca corrected, but she was smiling. Her phone rang. Her sister's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, what's up? Are you sitting down?" "Wait, never mind, you're always sitting. Forget I said that." Real smooth. "What's going on?" "Mom and Dad want to meet David and Lily. They're driving down next weekend and they're very insistent about it." Rebecca felt her stomach drop. Her parents had been supportive after the accident, maybe too supportive. They worried constantly, called daily, and questioned every decision she made. The idea of running a company while in a wheelchair terrified them. They'd softened over time, but they were still protective. Next weekend? Rebecca repeated, I know it's soon. But Mom's been asking about him for months and you keep putting her off. She's getting suspicious. Suspicious of what? That you're making him up. Or that he's secretly a serial killer. You know how she gets. After hanging up, Rebecca sat with the news for a moment. David appeared with a plate of pancakes. Everything okay? You look stressed. My parents want to meet you. Next weekend. David set the plate down and pulled up a chair. That's good, right? I mean, that's a normal relationship step. My parents are complicated. They're loving and supportive, but they worry about me constantly. They're going to have questions. Lots of questions. About me? About everything. Whether you're in this for the right reasons. Whether you understand what you're getting into. Whether you're going to hurt me. She paused. My mom is particularly protective. After the accident, she wanted me to move back home. She didn't think I could manage on my own. But you proved her wrong. Eventually. But she still sees me as fragile sometimes. And bringing someone into my life, especially someone with a kid, it's going to trigger all her protective instincts. David reached across the table and took her hand. We'll handle it together. If you want me to meet them, I'm in. If you need more time, that's fine too. Whatever you need, Rebecca squeezed his hand. I want you to meet them. I'm just warning you, it might be intense. I teach fourth graders. I can handle intense. This is a different kind of intense. Lily wandered in, violin still in hand. Why do you look worried? Did someone die? Lily, David said. You can't just ask people if someone died. But her face looks like the face people make when something bad happens. No one died, Rebecca assured her. My parents are coming to visit next weekend. They want to meet your dad. Lily's face lit up. Are they nice? Will they like me? I can show them my art. They'll definitely like you, Rebecca said. You're impossible not to like. That's what Dad says, but I thought he was just being a dad. The following week, Rebecca threw herself into preparation mode. She cleaned her apartment obsessively, planned the perfect restaurant for dinner, and rehearsed conversations in her head. David teased her gently about it, but she could tell he was nervous too. The day arrived with perfect weather, sunny and mild. Rebecca's parents drove up from their home upstate, arriving at her apartment precisely at 2 o'clock. Her father was a retired engineer, methodical and punctual. Her mother was a former nurse, warm but observant. Sweetheart. Her mother enveloped her in a hug. You look wonderful. Are you eating enough? You look thin. Mom, I'm fine. I just saw you last month. A month is a long time. She pulled back, studying Rebecca's face. But you do look happy, different. That's what I said, her father added, hugging Rebecca. You've got that glow people talk about. Can we not make this weird before you even meet him? We're not making it weird. We're being observant, her mother said. So when do we meet this mysterious David? He's picking us up at 4. We're having an early dinner and then you'll meet Lily. Her mother's expression shifted slightly. The daughter. How old is she again? 8. She's amazing, Mom, really creative and smart. I'm sure she is. It's just a lot, honey. A ready-made family. Are you sure you're ready for that? Here it was. The concern Rebecca had been expecting. Mom, I'm 34. I run a company. I think I can decide if I'm ready for a relationship. I'm not questioning your judgment. I just want to make sure you're thinking this through. Being with someone who has a child, that's a big responsibility. Linda, let her breathe, Rebecca's father interjected. We just got here. When David arrived, Rebecca watched her parents' faces carefully. They were polite, shaking his hand, smiling. But she could see her mother assessing him, taking in every detail. Dinner started off cordial but tense. David answered questions about his job, his family, his divorce. He was honest and straightforward, not trying to impress them, just being himself. So you teach elementary school? Rebecca's mother said. That must be rewarding but challenging financially. Mom, Rebecca said warningly. It's okay, David said calmly. It's a fair question. Teaching doesn't pay as well as some other professions, that's true. But I'm comfortable and Lily and I have what we need. I'm not looking for someone to support us if that's what you're asking. Rebecca's mother had the grace to look embarrassed. I didn't mean to imply. I know, David said gently. You're protecting your daughter. I respect that. If I were in your position, I'd have questions too. Rebecca's father, who'd been mostly quiet, spoke up. Rebecca says you volunteer with an adaptive sports program. I do. My brother has cerebral palsy and the program made a huge difference in his life. I volunteer when I can, mostly helping with wheelchair basketball. That's admirable. Her father's expression warmed slightly. Not many people dedicate time to that kind of work. The conversation shifted after that, becoming more natural. David shared stories about his students, made her father laugh with a story about a disastrous science experiment, and showed genuine interest in her mother's nursing background. But Rebecca could tell her mother was still holding back, still watching everything with careful eyes. After dinner, they drove to David's house. Lily was practically vibrating with excitement when they arrived, wearing what she called her fancy dress, which was covered in paint stains. "I'm Lily," she announced before anyone could make introductions. "Rebecca said you're her parents, which means you're kind of like my grandparents, except not really. But maybe someday. Do you want to see my art?" Rebecca's mother looked stunned by this whirlwind greeting, but her father laughed, crouching down to Lily's level. "I'd love to see your art. I hear you're very talented." "I am," Lily said with zero humility. "Come on, I'll show you." She grabbed his hand and pulled him inside, chattering the entire time. Rebecca's mother turned to her. "She's very energetic. She's excited. She's been asking about you all week." Inside, Lily gave them the full gallery tour. Rebecca's father asked thoughtful questions, genuinely interested. Her mother was slower to warm up, but Rebecca saw her expression soften when Lily showed her the drawing she'd made of Rebecca's wheelchair, complete with lightning bolts and stars. "Thunder," Lily explained. "That's what I named Rebecca's chair, because it's powerful and strong. Dad says naming important things gives them respect." "That's very wise," Rebecca's mother said quietly, looking at the drawing with new eyes. Later, after Lily had exhausted herself and fallen asleep on the couch, the adults sat in David's kitchen drinking coffee. The evening had grown late, comfortable. "I need to say something," Rebecca's mother began, and Rebecca braced herself. "When Rebecca first told me about you, I was skeptical. Not because of you personally, but because I worry about her. I worry she'll get hurt, or that someone will take advantage of her, or that she'll settle for less than she deserves." "Mom," Rebecca started, but her mother held up a hand. "Let me finish. But watching you two together, watching you with your daughter, I can see this is real. You look at Rebecca like she's the most capable person in the world. Not despite her wheelchair, not because of it, just as herself. And that's what I've wanted for he.